All right, here we are on another episode of It's Not About the Weights. This is my third workout of 2026 in preparation for my competition, June 20th, 2026. This is my first leg workout of the year, and I was able to do 410 for 6 reps on the squat very easily, which makes me question my training, because without training at all, I stay pretty strong. And every time I don't train for a while, I'm always surprised how strong I am. And it makes me question my training, because I'm like, how much of this is just my natural strength? I can always squat 500 pounds somehow with no training at all. If I can squat, if I feel up to squatting, I can squat 500 pounds, and I don't have to train for a year, and I could do that. So we'll see with training what I could push to, but I think I could have easily done quite a bit more than 6 reps. But I didn't want to push myself. I'm not really trying to push the squat. So I just did a good solid 6, and who knows what else I could have done. I definitely feel like I could have done 10 to 12, but don't know because I didn't do it. Anyways, I wanted to get into some other things here than just training. The name, It's Not About the Weights. Where did that come from? Well, I got that from Sean Frankel, and I have a gym vision to open a gym, and Sean flew me to Iowa to confirm that vision, to see if it was from God. And when I went out there, he told me it's not about the weights. It's not about the weights. And Sean is the greatest power lifter who ever lived. He's the greatest lifter there's ever been. So if there's anyone who you would think would say it's about the weights, it's Sean Frankel. But that's not what he said. He said it's not about the weights. It's about the people. He said, when you have your gym, it's about the people who come into those doors. That's what it's about. It's about the people. And he shared stories about how people told him after they had conversations that they decided to not commit suicide. And the Lord was able to use him through the gym to lead people to the Lord and do God's work. So that got my wheels turning in my head about what the gym is to me, and it really is not about the weights. I started lifting when I was 11 years old, and I grew up in a home filled with drugs and alcohol and all that comes along with that. So it was a very stressful environment at my house. Every single day was fighting and yelling and screaming and crying and all of those things, and I was a little kid, and stressed out, afraid, and I had all kinds of emotional issues because of the environment that I lived in, and I didn't know how to deal with them. I did not know how to deal with what was going on inside of me, and I just felt all kinds of emotions. And when I started lifting weights, it was a way for me to release those emotions and deal with those emotions. It was an outlet for me. So I was able to come to grips with all the feelings that I felt through lifting weights. And that was 30 years ago when that began. And it still remains the same reason that I lift weights. To this day, today I actually was overwhelmed with severe depression. And that hasn't been normal for me for a while. But recently I had, my father passed away, and my stepdad's really sick. And there's some, stuff going on in my life that has caused severe depression. And I knew the thing that would help me, I knew the only thing that would help me was the weight room. And it's not about the weights. This is the place that the Lord has given me, a sanctuary to deal with these things. And for that, I'm grateful. I want to share this story as well. When Sean flew me out to Iowa, he flew me, my wife, my two sons, Samuel and Daniel, paid for our flights, paid for our vehicle, paid for our hotel, paid for our food. I mean, he paid for everything, and he gave me a message about giving, because his gym, he told me that God gave him the vision for his gym. And he was at church, and they asked for a faith offering. And they said, if the Lord puts a number on your heart or on your mind to give, we just ask that you give that in faith. And he said he prayed, and God told him to give $1,000 a month. And he said, God, I don't have $1,000 a month. I cannot give $1,000 a month. And he said he prayed again, and the Lord said, give $1,000 a month. And so he said, all right, Lord, if you're telling me to give $1,000 a month, I'm going to give $1,000 a month, and you're going to provide that $1,000 a month. And he said he wrote a check, signed up to give $1,000 a month, and gave it. And he said when he did that, immediately the Lord gave him his gym. And immediately he was making $10,000 a month, making that $1,000 a month that he was giving 10% exactly of his income. And he said from there, what he did was he would increase his giving to the income that he wanted. And so he said if he increased the giving to $2,000 a month, his income went up to $20,000 a month. It always matched it perfectly. And he said very quickly he had to move to a larger building. He was renting a space right next to a bar. And he had asked the Lord, do you really want me to put my gym right next to this bar? And the Lord told him, yes, because I want you to reach those people at that bar. But when the gym grew, he had to expand to a larger location. So he moved into this much larger building, and he rented about a quarter of the building. And he said very quickly he had to expand to half the building, and then he had to expand to 3/4 of the building, and then he had to expand to the entire building, and then he bought the building. And this is the story that he told me when he flew me out to Iowa. He paid for everything, and he told me the story of his gym, which was founded on giving. He also told me that on Tuesday nights in his gym, he had a Bible study group with about 20 men that came to it, and he was going to have me as a guest speaker. And he said, I want you to come and share your story with all of these guys and be the guest speaker for the night. So for me, this was the greatest thing ever. I was so excited to do this, and I really felt like, in my mind, that was the reason I was going there. And I had been sharing my testimony recently, and when you share your testimony, there's things you keep in and there's things you leave out. And every time you share your testimony, it's different. You're talking to different people, and you leave different things in and you take different things out. And The guy that runs my Bible study, Brian Myers, he had coached me on this and shared the story of Nathaniel the prophet, who went to David and he told David that a wealthy man with 100 sheep came across a poor man with one sheep, and he killed that man and he took his one sheep. And David, who was the king, used to be a shepherd, and this enraged him. It made him so angry, and he told the prophet, "Bring me this man so that I could judge him and kill him." And the prophet looked at David and said, "The man is you, David." And he was talking about the adultery that David had committed and the woman's husband who he had killed so he could take his wife. And he said, "God has seen what you have done." And what Brian was saying to me was that the prophet Nathan, he probably didn't want to share that story with David, right? He probably would have rather said something else. He probably would have, shared something different if he had the choice. And maybe if he would have took someone else's advice, they might have said, "Hey, I wouldn't really recommend sharing that story with the king," right? But the prophet Nathan took his instruction from the Lord. And so in preparation for this, I gave it to the Lord and I said, "Lord, what do you want me to share with these guys? What is the message that you have for me to give to them?" And I thought about who they were, and I thought about Sean, and I thought about myself, and I said, the connection between all of us is the gym. It is the gym. And Sean is the ultimate example because he's the best ever, right? He's the pinnacle. He's the ultimate in this realm. And so I thought, well, what is this realm for me personally? And I realized that it was my way of dealing with my emotions my entire life since I was 11 years old. And as I'm recording this right now, I'm 41, so it's been 30 years. And that inspired me to look up the emotions of Jesus. I started researching and studying what are the emotions that Jesus displayed the most. And the emotion that he displayed the most, by far, was compassion. Jesus had compassion for people. And there was one verse in particular that stuck out to me that the Lord highlighted to me, and that was Mark 6:34. And it says that Jesus came across a large crowd and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And so he began to teach them many things. And so as I looked into this, as I dug deeper, as I studied more, I found out that the word compassion is actually two words joined into one. And it makes sense when you hear it. Come and passion. So compassion means to come with passion. And that completely changed the meaning of compassion to me, because I had always thought compassion means to feel sorry or sympathy for somebody. But to come with passion resonated way more with me, because I've always been a very passionate person. People describe me as being very zealous. They say, "Man, you're really enthusiastic. You have a lot of enthusiasm," which that's another word that I researched. Enthusiasm means in theos, which means in God. So when you're in God, when you're walking in God, you're going to have a lot of enthusiasm. You're going to be a very zealous person because you're inspired by the Lord and what you're doing. And so studying the meaning of words is something that I really enjoy doing. And the more I studied the word compassion, I found out that in Latin, passion means willingness to suffer and endure. So Jesus, he came with a willingness to suffer and endure for the people. And he looked at them in their sin, dead in their trespasses, and he asked the question, what will it take to rescue them? And it would take suffering, pain, and suffering to death. And his passion was so great, his love for the people was so great that he did it without question. It was no question. He would pay the price, what it took. He would count the cost, and he would give his life to rescue the people from their sin. Now, this gave me a perfect message to tie in together with the gym, because I had Sean Frankel as an example, and I had myself to relate as well, because I could say, hey, I've been able to accomplish a lot in sports. I was a fighter for a long time. I was a power lifter. I did strongman and bodybuilding. And I realized that I was so passionate that I was able to endure a lot of suffering that most people would have quit because of it, right? Like, that separated me from most people. I could say that I've done these things that most people have not done because I had a willingness to suffer and endure through the pain. And then looking at Sean, I thought, this guy had the willingness and the willingness to suffer and endure to become the greatest of all time. And I've thought about this a lot as well, because really, the only one who really truly is the greatest of all time is Jesus, right? He is the only one that is greater than everyone else. He's the greatest, right? But when it comes to competitive sport, the greatest competitor of all time in the sport of powerlifting is Sean Frankel. And he has told me himself that it was because of his willingness to suffer and endure pain. He set his mind to it and said, whatever it takes, I will do. And he would also convince himself that the pain was good. And he said, if you're going to do this, if you're going to set your mind to this, you have to be prepared to feel terrible all the time, to always be in pain, to always be recovering, to always be suffering, because that's what it takes to be the best. Now, I would say that the greater the accomplishment or the greater the feat, the more pain and suffering it's going to take, right? Jesus, to rescue us from our sins, he had to be brutally beaten beyond human recognition, nailed to a cross where he suffocated to death. He bled to death. He was tortured to rescue us from our sin. And he also had to live a sinless life as well, right? Which is another part of it, right? If you're going to be the greatest powerlifter of all time, you're going to have to eat pretty clean. You're going to have to make sure you're sleeping right. You're going to have to make sure you're doing everything right, living the right way. You can't just live how other people live. You have to live differently. You have to be set apart from the world. There has to be something that separates you into an exclusive group that makes you different than everyone else if you want to do something that no one else has ever done. Now, this story of Sean and the gym paints a perfect picture of the Christian walk. Perfectly. You could describe it perfectly, and it's a way that I could describe it to these men. These were not your typical Christian men that I was going to go speak to. These were a bunch of big, rough, strong men that, might be hard for some people to resonate with. But the Lord gave me Sean as an example to paint this picture of the passion of Christ. And Sean passion to break all the world records. That's what he told me. That was his goal. His goal was to break all the world records, and he did, and he still holds them to this day. And the incredible thing is that it's the story that God created through that journey, right? Because Sean set out to break all the world records in powerlifting, and God connected him with this trainer, Rick Hussey, who's the man who founded Big Iron Gym. He created the first Big Iron Gym. He met Sean at a powerlifting competition, invited him to come train with him. Sean drove an hour and a half every single day one way and an hour and a half back every day to train with Rick for 10 years, broke all the world records, gained Rick's respect, who Rick did not respect people easily. He didn't think much of people's words. You had to show him, you had to prove through your actions that you were a man of integrity, that you were respectable for him to respect you. And in 10 years, Sean gained his respect, and Rick was diagnosed with cancer. And when Rick was diagnosed with cancer, because he respected Sean, Sean was able to lead him to the Lord. Rick got saved, passed away, and went to heaven. That is the origin story of Big Iron Gym. And that is the Lord's story that he wrote. And then the Lord connected me to Sean. And Sean told me about his niece, Morgan, who had pancreatic cancer. And I shared my testimony with Morgan. And that led to me having a vision for my own gym, where Sean said it should be a Big Iron Gym, and it's not about the weights. It's about the people. If you want the vision, shoot me a message. Text me or email me. Mark 634.